every time I hear this guy, it's the worst thing I've ever heard him say. My respect for him was low at the start, because how I got to know him, I mean, I've never met him personally, just to be clear. I don't know him in that sense. But the way I first became aware of him was when he was, like, helping to direct racist hate mobs at Professor Flowers, lying and claiming that they had advocated white genocide, which is a great thing for a guy who claims to be an ex-Nazi to get very excited about. That, you know, that's not at all a Nazi thing to be, like, fucking fear-mongering about. Like, that was the starting point. That, and he's been going downhill from that. He's gonna make him think. What do you think he's gonna make him think about?
There's no evidence that Israel's currently conducting an ethnic cleansing. What they are conducting, however, this is not a defense of Israel, what they are conducting, however, is a mass colonization effort that involves the displacement and killing of countless people.
This motherfucker, that's literally what I can't, like, okay, you just, like, the teapot is, like, fucking whistling, okay? You made my fucking teapot whistle, Xanderhal. I hope you're happy. Now I want a cup of tea. That is literally what ethnic cleansing is, you absolute... I will now. That is what ethnic cleansing is.
Joe Biden has been so lax with Israel that they feel like they can do whatever they want. Dude.
Well, yes! Yes! They've killed like 40,000 people. Every single time the resistance kicks them out of one of their hospital massacres, they find a huge-ass mass grave. 40,000 people, it's worth noting. I just want to put this into, some kind of context. Basically, the overwhelming majority of the people Israel has killed since ever, since there's been Israel, since 1948, have been killed in Gaza since October 7th. Okay? Like, so yeah. And the fact that Israel felt comfortable just, you know, casually bombing a fucking third country's consulate like that? Yeah, that does seem like maybe the U.S. has made it very clear to them they can just do whatever the fuck they want. What is he gonna say to this?
People like Hassan and people on this side of the left necessarily
this side of the left, because he's like, what, he's the pro-Israel, pro-imperialist side of the left? There's no pro-genocide side of the left, motherfucker. If you're pro-genocide, you're not there.
Always have to end up whitewashing Republicans and the far right. Donald Trump is in loud and very proud...
What the fuck are you talking about, Donald Trump? We're talking about the fact that Biden has very explicitly... I mean, when he said no red lines, that is a direct quote from Biden. He was asked, are there any red lines? Very early on in this thing. You know, are there any red lines that Israel could cross and the U.S. would tell him to back off? And he said, no, there are no red lines. That's a quote. So now he's bringing Trump into it.
Support of not just Israel, but Israel crushing the Palestinians.
That's already happening, motherfucker.
This conflict would be over by now if he was president, because he would have given everything to Israel they needed to wipe...
What would he give? What would he be giving that Israel does not already have, though? I mean, that's what's fucking silly about this. Because Israel is already getting ridiculous amounts of firepower. Hundreds of arms deliveries. You know, what exactly is he saying he would give them that they aren't already getting?
About Hamas. You can guess what that means. The problem is people like Hassan, you have to understand that like a large proportion of lefties online right now that are advocating for Palestinians and Gaza and all that.
Yeah, Gaza and all that. You know, people, all these weird lefties, you know, who think that genocide is a bad thing. and have worked out that since they're being systematically starved, in addition to being carpet bombed, that there may not be anyone fucking left alive by November, let alone for when Trump takes office. And I say when because I just do not see Biden winning this thing, because Biden seems very committed to losing it.
They don't actually care. Okay? They are legitimately grifters, whether it be grifting money, like Hassan, or just kind of grifting social status and likes. A lot of people in the online...
See, let me just say, I do not hold any particular brief for Hassan. When I've watched his stuff, which is not often, I have found he seems to be generally on the right side of things. I will say that. But I don't know much about him, so I'm not speaking. But this idea, so the people who are against the genocide, you see, the people who are risking their asses, risking their jobs, they're grifting for money. You see, the people who are like losing their fucking jobs because they take a stand against genocide, the students who are getting the shit knocked out of them at universities across the U.S. for opposing the genocide, they're the ones who are just grifting. They don't care. Xanderhal, he's the one who cares. And he's telling us what he cares about, and it is horrible.
Left, especially those in this sphere, are massive no-lifes whose entire social life exists online on social media. And they have a very small circle or bubble that they need...
Oh, unlike Xanderhal, who's just like a total, Renaissance man organizer. You just see, I mean, every time there's a picket line, Xanderhal's walking it. Every time, somebody, there are barricades and people need to hold back the cops, he's in the front lines. He's not terminally online at all.
Keep happy, and they want to gain like a sort of, that social XP and that level, those levels, And trying to out...
does he think his audience, maybe they are such rubes? Because the thing is, if you want to grift, and do it successfully, and get money, and get social position, and get sponsorships and stuff like that, the position you take, the position where all the money is to take Xanderhal's position here, which is to suck up to Biden unconditionally, and tell people why they should not care about a genocide that Biden is committing. Wow, this fucking guy.
Each other, or not even out-woke each other, honestly. This is more so just trying to out-anti-America each other, is essentially how they get ahead in this space. And Hassan kind of acts as like the gravitational mass at the center of this orbit of
This is a very Caleb Maupin
that identify with the label leftist.
Burger King.
They violated numerous red lines, as you guys know, both the ethnic cleansing in Gaza, but beyond that, way more severe red lines that they violated, such as...
I'm curious. What's
he curious about, chat? What's he gonna be curious about? Because, nothing he said. I mean, the only thing I would push back on there is that he said ethnic cleansing and not just fucking genocide. I mean, the two things go together. I mean, Israel does have a very stated objective of expelling the population, any survivors from Gaza. So, I mean, it's ethnic cleansing is kind of in the mix in that way. And apparently, the latest figure I saw is that there are 80,000 Palestinians from Gaza who are now seeking refuge within Egypt because it's just completely uninhabitable in Gaza. So, but what's he about to push back on here? What do you think, chat? Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing, I can't wait. What red lines weren't crossed?
Institution considers what is happening in Gaza an ethnic cleansing. Consider...
What is it?
That they violated, such as...
I'm curious. What institution considers what is happening in Gaza an ethnic cleansing?
How much time you got? How much fucking time you got? I mean, the International Court of Justice said it was plausible that Israel was committing genocide and ordered them over a month ago now to stop killing people and stop obstructing aid, and that has been flagrantly rejected, defied by the U.S. and Israel. Like, numerous top respected scholars of the Holocaust and genocide have been ringing the alarm bells for months about this. Like, I mean, it's easier to count the ones that deny it's a genocide.
Like, are there any human rights
Yes!
institutions that are like really well reputable and like agreed upon to not be like super biased in like a particular country's favor or something, for any weird reasons that could be easy to pick apart for somebody?
Just out of curious, let's see. Amnesty Gaza. Okay, Amnesty International, here, I'll just put this here. I mean, Amnesty International seems to be a fairly uncontroversial human rights organization for a guy like Xanderhal. I mean, if anything, they tend to have a revolving door with the State Department, and they say, Amnesty International welcomes the new report by UN Special Rapporteur, Francesca Albanese, on the situation of human rights in the Palestinian territory occupied since 1967, which concludes that, quote, there are reasonable grounds to believe the threshold indicating Israel's commission of genocide is met. So, I've just dropped that link in chat for you. So, yeah, lots of them actually would go way further than just saying ethnic cleansing, which generally just means kicking people out of the land. Like, ethnic cleansing was the Nakba, when, like, 750,000 Palestinians were kicked out of their homes. And I decided I had never actually... You always hear about the ethnic cleansing, the mass expulsion of people, but I'd never actually heard how many people were killed, how many Palestinians were killed. So I went back the other day to look that up. And the number that I found, apparently, that seems to be the consensus is 15,000. Which is to say that Israel and the U.S. topped the Nakba within, like, the first month of this thing.
Like, is there grounds to say what's happening in Gaza is an ethnic cleansing?
Yes, Israel has explicitly said so.
Because
this motherfucker was just criticizing Hassan's research methods, and here he is. He's been crapping on about Gaza and telling people not to care about it for like a month or so now. He hardly says anything about it, but when he does, it's why people shouldn't care about it. And he somehow did not notice that just about every respected human rights institution internationally is saying that it's genocide.
Technically, what's happening in Gaza doesn't even meet international law's definition of a genocide.
He doesn't understand the difference between genocide and ethnic cleansing. But he's going to explain why the International Court of Justice and the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and every international law scholar who isn't working for the Israeli government or the US government is wrong right now. Like, he does not understand that genocide actually is a step beyond ethnic cleansing. That ethnic cleansing just means kicking people out, and genocide tends to mean, like, actually trying to kill them. Yeah, but I mean, the one thing that is generally accepted is that genocide is worse than ethnic cleansing. I mean, although there are people who say, actually, and I think there is a lot of merit, I'm using the legal definitions here, and you're quite right, there isn't a specific legal definition of ethnic cleansing, although there is forced transfer of populations, which is actually, I mean, that's a war crime under international law, and that basically falls under that is basically the normal accepted definition of ethnic cleansing as well. But he apparently does not understand that genocide is actually considered to be a step beyond that.
which is, you know, I think a kind of a mark on the definition of genocide by international law, less so than a sort of like, oh yeah, Israel's doing nothing wrong kind of point.
Like, does he understand? He has not paid any attention to any of this. He is telling his audience this, and they are at this point just sucking up to him. No, there's zero pushback. And he does not know the first thing about what's going on. I don't know why I should feel surprised about this. Yeah, I mean, and not just individual, we're talking hundreds. Hey!
But regardless, the idea that, like, there's any definitional claim from large institutions or anything along those lines to claim that how Israel is handling their conflict with Hamas is an ethnic cleansing?
Like, does he not know that ethnic cleansing is what Israel's been doing all along? And also, notice he keeps on doing this thing where he pretends it's a conflict with Hamas. I mean, he just accepts the U.S. framing totally without question. I mean, never mind that Israel is expelling people from villages in the West Bank where there is no Hamas presence. Never mind any of that shit. Like...
That is extreme.
No, it isn't.
Why not just call it mass killing because of, like, indiscriminate...
Because that's not the same thing, you dickhead. Ethnic cleansing isn't mass killing. You can do ethnic cleansing without killing anyone. I mean... It doesn't... I mean, I'm talking theoretically. I can't think of a single example of ethnic cleansing happen where nobody got killed. But theoretically, you could do it. Because ethnic cleansing does not definitionally require killing, it requires expulsion. Well, in international law, the standard is A, the intent to destroy a group as such in whole or in part, and one of several enumerated acts, killing members of the group, causing serious physical or mental harm to members of the group, creating living conditions that are unsurvivable for the group, preventing births, and various things. And the thing is, what genocide scholars, who obviously could take a page from Xanderhal's book, because Xanderhal is the authority on all this, as a guy who's never actually fucking read anything about it, and what they've pointed out is that what's unusual in this case is that Israel has been so open about their intent. Like, that isn't usual. It is not normal for genocidal regimes to come right out and say, we want to kill everybody. But Israeli officials have been saying it all the fuck along. They've been saying it from the start. They have not left any room for doubt, and like, just about every scholar on the subject of genocide in international law has been saying, this is off the hook. You never see this. They are just outright, they're saying the quiet part out loud. Usually the hard thing to prove in a genocide case is the intent, because people who do genocide try to, obfuscate that a little bit, but Israel isn't obfuscating. They're just openly saying, yeah, we want to kill everybody.
Bombings and strikes on Hamas.
They're not on Hamas.
Like, they're not... From everything that I have been able to tell, the goal is not to wipe out all Palestinians.
They say the goal is to wipe out all Palestinians, and they are doing things that are capable of making that fucking happen.
It's a nation out there that is responsible. It's not true. It's not rhetoric about civilians not aware, not involved. It's absolutely
יש בעזה 2 מיליון נאצים שרוצים לשחוט, ליהנות ולרצוח כל יהודי. אני לא רוצה עכשיו להיכנס בהרחבה ושרוצה יכול לצור פוסטים שכתבתי בעידן אותו 2017.
כן, מניח כל אחד ואחד מהם הוא נאצי שרוצה לרצוח יהודים שם ברצועת עזה? כל אחד ואחד?
הרוב המוחלט של אוכלוסיית עזה גדלה בתודעת שנאה תהומית למדינת ישראל. אני מזכיר לך שלא זה מהאוכלוסייה שם, זו אוכלוסיית פלסטינים.
אין חשמל, אין מזון, אין מים, אין דלק. הכל סגור. אנחנו נלחמים בחיי אדם.
את אשר עשה לך עמלק מצטווה. אנו זוכרים?
האנשים האלה שם מוות קשה, מוות בייסורים, ובמקום זה אנחנו רואים אותם מבלים בים, ובסטלבט שלהם, ובכיף שלהם. האנשים האלה, אין שם חפים מפשע ברצועת עזה, אין שם, הם הצביעו חמאס, הם רוצים חמאס, הם חגגו, הם חילקו סוכרות, הם עכשיו מבלים בים שנייה אחת. העובדה שהם מבלים בים, במקום לרעוב, במקום להיות מטורטרים, במקום לעבור איסורים קשים, במקום להתחבא מהפגזות, הם מבלים בחוף הים, ובדיוק היינו צריכים לראות שם הרבה יותר נקמה, הרבה יותר נהרות של דם שלנו.
נפוצץ לכם את השקר בחינם ואת הבית. יש אמת אחת, תרצו או לא, עם ישראל חי. באנו במדים ולא באנו לשחק מנשק אותם
They have cut them off. The only reason that there's any food at all being allowed into Gaza is because Biden was feeling the pressure. And so there's been some symbolic humanitarian aid. Nowhere near enough. Nowhere near the already inadequate pre-October 7th levels. I mean, hardly any, but it's, symbolic. But Israel's official stance has been not one drop of water, not one scrap of food, not one bit of medicine, not one drop of fuel gets in. Yeah, very explicitly. Netanyahu says that they are Amalek and they should be exterminated like Amalek. And you hear there are videos on TikTok of Israeli death squads singing songs about how they're going to exterminate Amalek. And it gets on Israeli TV, and on Israeli TV, the presenters are like, see, those young lads, they understand what we need to be doing. On Israeli state TV, they had literal fucking children singing a song called We Will Annihilate Them, which includes a line about how in a year's time no one will be left alive in Gaza. How Xanderhal has to be making a special effort not to know anything about this to be saying this shit. It's a big old accident, you just drop 7,000 tons, it was like 6,000 bombs in the first week. Just accidentally. They actually, and 6,000 seems to have been what they had in stock. They literally dropped every bomb they had in week 1.
It is to take out Hamas, who is attacking Israel.
They're attacking Israeli tanks. They are literally defending, at this point, they are defending their Gaza from these death squads. They and the other 9 resistance factions have been taking the fight to them, blowing up their tanks and armored personnel carriers, taking out their snipers, and Israel has been feeling the heat. They're running out of armor as a result of this.
Care how many of the human shields Hamas uses, they have to
he's doing the human shield bullshit too. Francesca Albanese, the good Albanese, She had a whole thing on this bullshit in her report. A key finding of this report is that Israel has strategically invoked the international humanitarian law framework as humanitarian camouflage to legitimize its genocidal violence in Gaza. And here's the section. Okay. This is paragraph 55. I will just drop this link in chat. You can all look at it. It is a great report. It's hard to read. Yeah. Oh, I would like some weed, too. Yeah, I think Xanderhal, when you watch one of his streams, YouTube should send you weed. A core feature of Israel's conduct since 7 October has been the intensification of its de-civilianization of Palestinians, a protected group under the convention, by the which she means the Genocide Convention. Okay. Israel has used IHL terminology to justify its systematic use of lethal violence against Palestinian civilians as a group and the extensive destruction of life-sustaining infrastructures. Israel has done this by deploying IHL concepts such as human shields, collateral damage, safe zones, evacuations, and medical protection in such a permissive manner as to gut these concepts of their normative content, subverting their protective purpose, and ultimately eroding the distinction between civilians and combatants in Israeli actions in Gaza. Official statements, as paragraph 56, have translated into military conduct that repudiates the very notion of civilian protection. Israel has thus radically altered the balance struck by IHL between civilian protection and military necessity, as well as the customary rules of distinction, proportionality, and precaution. This has obscured one cardinal tenet of IHL: indiscriminate attacks, which do not distinguish military targets from protected persons and objects, cannot be proportionate and are always unlawful. 57. On the ground, this distortion of IHL, articulated by Israel as state policy in its official documents, has transformed an entire national group and its inhabited space into a destroyable target, revealing an eliminationist conduct of hostilities. This has had devastating effects, costing the lives of tens of thousands of Palestinian civilians, destroying the structural fabric of life in Gaza, and causing irreparable harm. This illustrates a clear pattern of conduct from which the requisite genocidal intent is the only reasonable inference to be drawn. This is, he was talking about, and she's talked about this in interviews as well, since the report came out. She says, pointing out that the whole point of the concept of human shields is that you're not allowed to attack them because they're civilians. Except Israel has never been deterred by that. Not once. Despite Palestinians are deterred by it, which is why when Israel uses Palestinians as human shields, as they do rather a lot, I mean, they openly acknowledge the practice, they avoid being attacked. It's just one Israeli talking point after another. I had people in the comments when I did the first one where I was pointing out that he was just, fucking parroting Israeli talking points, saying, no, I'm sure he didn't mean that. He probably was gonna say that actually it's worse. They were, he was being sarcastic, he was being ironic. No, he's just outright saying, these are just Israeli talking points. There's no evidence of Palestinian resistance forces using human shields. There is film. We've got Israeli goons on film forcing Palestinians to walk point on their patrols. They have an official stated, it has a name, it's called the neighbor procedure, where they use Palestinians as human shields when they go into Palestinian villages and stuff, so that nobody will, fire on them or something like that. I mean, he's just gargling the fucking propaganda. Yeah, it's a very good word for it. He's bogarting that shit. I mean, Xanderhal at this point is just a Hasbara stream.
Through to get to it. And that's the horrific thing about Israel. Hamas uses human shields, and Israel doesn't fucking care most of the time. Well, I'm sure most of the time they do. To be real, I've seen a lot of...
Most of the time? He's sure most of the time they do. Actually, Francesca Albanese, the special rapporteur that said that the threshold for genocide was met and was, her report was spoken of very approvingly by Amnesty International, who I would imagine would fit his definition of a respected institution or whatever. One of the points she made is that the whole point of like the law of international humanitarian law is you're not supposed to shoot civilians. And Israel turns that around and says that if there are civilians, that then, if civilians get killed, they are human shields. Like, there's literally no evidence of Israel ever being deterred by the presence of civilians, including their own civilians, it's worth noting.
A lot of, like, stories where they evacuate people out before they strike, like, a Hamas camp, but too often.
Hamas camp. What he means is the Jabalia refugee camp. And what he's talking about is what's called bomb threats. Israel actually like brags about the fact that they call in bomb threats. They'll be like, I do not know of any other army in the world that will call you up and say they are about to bomb you. And it's like, I seem to remember the IRA did that pretty regularly, actually. The difference is the IRA did not, like, call people up, say, we're about to bomb you, and then tell them to go to the place that was about to be bombed. That's an Israeli innovation, to tell people to evacuate to some place that they then bomb. Like, when we're talking about Rafah, the reason there's so many people in fucking Rafah is that Israel told everybody that was the safe area. And once like 1 million people showed up, like half of Gaza's population showed up in Rafah, they started bombing Rafah.
Too often, like every other day, every few days, I'm hearing about a bunch of children getting blown up in an IDF airstrike. So clearly,
what do you mean every couple of days? That's like literally every day.
But the clear, like at least explicitly stated, there does not seem to be a national objective right now of ethnically cleansing the Palestinian people.
Where the fuck have you been, Xanderhal? They're openly talking about how they are going. And now let me just say, this is fantasy for the home front, because they have to actually beat the resistance to be able to do any of these plans, and there's no sign that they're going to do that. But they have been talking all along, very openly, about expelling the population of Gaza, any survivors, send them to Egypt, put them in concentration camps in the Sinai. They're talking about, you have like real estate grifters in Israel trying to sell beachfront property in Gaza. The army can't stay in one place for more than 5 minutes without getting sniped or like RPG'd. But, fucking estate agents are already, gonna sell people fucking holiday homes. I'm sure that'll go perfectly. This has been going on for 6 months, and this motherfucker has not paid. If he's paying, either he's paying zero attention to any of it, or he is paying attention and he is just deliberately lying in defense of a genocide. Either way, I have to say, Xanderhal. Remember how Xanderhal, when we first met Xanderhal on this stream here, on the Seagull stream, all of that time ago, he was talking about why leftists should never be allowed to have any distrust about any ex-Nazi who wants to be in their spaces. Xanderhal was expressing this opinion, being an ex-Nazi himself. And now he is explaining to us where that distrust comes from.
Breaking Beirut, Lebanon, not just southern Lebanon.
Yes, Israel has targeted you spelled it mosquitoes almost. Mosques, hospitals, and the university. That's a lot of culture.
And not the university, every fucking university.
Backbone. So you understand that Gaza is like the size of like an old Fallout map, right? Like an old map in a video game. It's not very large, you know?
Yeah, except there are real fucking people in there, Xanderhal.
Hamas controls that area and operates out of every intact, solid building that they can. They're
not operating out of intact, solid buildings. What John Elmer over at EI has called military vandalism, where they're just blowing up the frontage of residential blocks for no military purpose. What it has done is turn them into ideal firing positions. And so actually the resistance factions, all 10 of them, are using the firing positions that Israel has created by vandalizing, people's homes. The people have been expelled long ago, or they're already dead. The frontage of the buildings has been blown off by Israel's tanks and shit. And so now it's an ideal firing position, and they set up and they snipe at, and they, fire Yasin 105s at Israel's armor. And do so to fairly great effect, it seems, because Israel is running out of fucking armor.
in hospitals, they're in schools.
No, they're not in hospitals. This is Jesus. He's just, he's just gargling the propaganda. There's no evidence that they're in hospitals. There's no evidence that they're in schools. Israel has been attacking hospitals, including with chemical weapons, for literal decades now, always claiming that Palestinian resistance fighters are using those hospitals as military positions, which there's never been any evidence provided. Never been any evidence. Israel has used those hospitals as military positions, lately they've been using those hospitals as fucking death camps and leaving huge-ass mass graves behind when they're finally kicked out by the resistance. But he's just, uncritically parroting this bullshit. Wow. Every time I hear this guy, it's the worst thing I've ever heard him say. My respect for him was low at the start, because how I got to know him, I've never met him personally, just to be clear. I don't know him in that sense. But the way I first became aware of him was when he was, helping to direct racist hate mobs at Professor Flowers, lying and claiming that they had advocated white genocide, which is a great thing for a guy who claims to be an ex-Nazi to get very excited about. That, that's not at all a Nazi thing to be, fucking fear-mongering about. That was the starting point. And he's been going downhill from that. Yeah, precipitously in recent months. He is just, at this point, why do we need him? There's already a Destiny. Why do we need a Xanderhal if there's already... Destiny is better at this bullshit.
They're in churches. They aren't, gonna avoid those buildings. If anything, they're going to choose them because of the slightest chance that the IDF might not bomb those buildings.
There's literally no... See, what he just said is the exact reason that this doesn't even make sense. Because the whole reason anyone would ever use a protected facility as a military position is that it gives you a tactical advantage because it's a protected facility and it's immune to enemy fire. But the thing is, Israel has never shown the slightest concern for the Geneva Conventions. They have never refrained. They have specifically sought out hospitals. The closest thing they have to military victories, they crow about this shit on their social media, for domestic consumption, is that they go into these hospitals and they murder a whole bunch of fucking health workers. Why would anyone be naive enough to think that the fact that a place is a protected facility under international law means Israel's not gonna fucking bomb it? Yeah, what he's doing is interesting because my impression is he's doing this specifically because he wants to stand Biden. And he's really kind of making a lot of our point for us, I think. Because a lot of us have been saying, if you stand Biden, you're standing genocide. And, well, here he is, standing genocide and Biden.
Because of what they are. That, like, I need you guys to think for a moment about
this. Yes, Xanderhal's audience who isn't watching this, please do think for a moment. Oh, no, he is starting to get some pushback. Lefty Jenna says, I do think it's at least clear that there are people in the Israeli government who do want to commit ethnic cleansing. If not even outright genocide. God, that's weak-ass pushback, but it's something.
These things. I know you guys just want to get mad at me because I'm not saying what you want me to just say. I'm not.
I love this thing. Tim Pool will sometimes do this. He will say the most standard right-wing talking point that no one in his audience is going to have a problem with, and go, I know I'm going to get all sorts of stick about this, and he'll break out the most just fucking bland-ass mayonnaise talking point that is just that everybody in his audience will agree with. You know, it's like, here, let me, I can do this too. I can do this too. See, okay, I know I'm gonna get fucking murdered in chat for this, okay? But chat, I gotta say, fuck Xanderhal. I gotta say it. I mean, nobody, people in chat are gonna just absolutely devour me for saying it, but fuck Xanderhal. I mean, his chat, like, literally anybody who had any critical thinking around what the US is doing left him, my monocle is in orbit. Okay, I love that. Is that a reference to something, or is that just something that you came up with off the cuff? I love the image, but, I mean, like, there's nobody left in his chat who is the slightest bit critical of him.
Not falling into audience capture like Hassan does, and I actually do research, and I don't just repeat what's popular to say on Twitter.
You just slagged him off for actually doing research at the beginning of this video, Xanderhal. Do you remember that you did that?
But I need you guys to just think for a moment.
He's gonna make him think. What do you think he's gonna make him think about?
There's no evidence that Israel's currently conducting an ethnic cleansing. What they are conducting, however, this is not a defense of Israel, what they are conducting, however, is a mass colonization effort that involves the displacement and killing of countless people.
This motherfucker, that's literally what I can't. Like, okay, you just, like, the teapot is, like, fucking whistling, okay? You made my fucking teapot whistle, Xanderhal. I hope you're happy. Now I want a cup of tea. That is literally what ethnic cleansing is, you absolute... I will now. That is what ethnic cleansing is. Let me just read that about... Let me read that back. Because, like...
There's no evidence that Israel's currently conducting an ethnic cleansing. What they are conducting, however... This is not a defense of Israel. What they are conducting, however, is a mass colonization effort that involves the displacement and killing of countless people in another nation.
That is literally what ethnic cleansing is. It's like it's like he's reading the definition of ethnic cleansing right now.
So, this is not a defense of Israel.
No, it really isn't. It really isn't. Except that you're like, because, I mean, if you know what the words mean, it isn't. But he's offering it like he's trying to get them acquitted of ethnic cleansing. That's like saying, okay, your lordship, my client did not commit murder. My client has, and let me just say, all my client has done, your lordship, is commit a killing with specific intent, premeditation, and malice aforethought of another person. There was no murder, just a premeditated killing with specific intent and malice aforethought. That's all, your lordship. I rest my case. Like, you're just reciting the fucking definition.
It's just that the way Hassan talks about this stuff is a problem. It may sound...
Yeah, because he knows what the words mean.
like I'm being, what's the word for it? Pedant?
No, you're not being... Well, you're trying to be pedantic, but the thing about pedants... The thing of there are qualifications for being a pedant. One of them is you gotta know things.
It may sound like I'm being pedantic and like hyper fixating on certain definitions. But I think it's important to pay attention to the way Hassan words this stuff because it's very emotional on purpose.
Yeah, I mean, it's fucked up that people would get emotional about the slaughter of over 40,000 people by a regime that has openly said they want to starve the other 2 million to death. Why that's so weird that somebody would get emotional about that. I mean, Xanderhal being a very normal guy, most normal guy ever, he would never get emotional about watching a regime that he lives in, that relies on his governability to do what they do, murder huge numbers of people in the most grotesque fucking ways possible. Like, everybody I know, practically, is some degree of fucking traumatized by this. Especially, like, Palestinian friends of mine, this has got them completely fucked up, as you can imagine, because they got fucking family there. But I'm talking about people who don't. You know, people who have friends who have family there, or people who don't necessarily even know anyone who's Palestinian, but are paying attention, and it's fucking us all up, because this is the worst. I've seen lots of atrocities, and I have absolutely no hesitation in saying this. I have never, in my lifetime, seen a worse atrocity than this one. I have seen all sorts of fucked up shit. This is worse than certainly in this century. But I am willing, I can confidently say in my lifetime as well. And that's not because there's so many wonderful, that it's been wonderful in my lifetime and atrocity-free. It's not. But this is different. This is actually kind of unprecedented. Head entry is a demand for precision, but I remember an old diagram showing the difference in precision and accuracy using the metaphor of gunshots on a target. Yeah, I mean, he's being the worst kind of pedant. A pedant who doesn't know shit. His shots are clustered tightly together, but not on the target, the wall, the range. They're all in the door of a Mazda in the parking lot. Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
Evoking emotion on an important issue to motivate people to care, and evoking emotion on an important issue to make people fall for your misinformation.
But you have not given a single example of misinformation from him yet. You've provided lots of examples of your own misinformation. He has not, there's not been a single thing that he's been able to point to that Hassan has said that is wrong. At best, what you could say is some of it he has understated the case. Whereas Xanderhal is just, doing a fucking Hasbara speedrun. Wow.